podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you in cooperation with the SJ Network. If you're a person who'd like to appear on a podcast, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
This week, it's a mini episode of Too Many Podcasts, featuring Sherpa Samples and a contest announcement. Tell me a quick bad joke.
I sold my vacuum the other day. All it was doing was collecting dust.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. We would like to give you a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial, simply by heading to www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles of audiobooks and podcasts, including this one, to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now, the one and only Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, the management. Wait a minute, this is a mini episode. I am going to lunch. Make your own bad joke.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels, and welcome to Too Many Podcasts. It is the podcast about podcasts and so much more, and you're going exploring with me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa, right here on the Sherpa Chalet on top of beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia. How are you? I welcome those of you who've been listening to the show all this time, all those over 250 episodes, and those of you who are just joining the show for the first time. Glad you guys had a listen. And today's a mini episode. No guests today. You're just going to have to put up with me for just a little while, I promise. I won't be too much of a pain, I promise. I won't even start going through your medicine cabinet or anything like that. Just had one or two things to talk about. And of course, we're going to do some Sherpa samples. And they're even going to be small too, because they're small podcasts. They're 10 podcasts that are all under 10 minutes. Pretty cool, huh? We'll get to that. And also, it's been a while since we've done a contest for Too Many Podcasts, and we've got one coming up. So hang in there, and I will be speaking about it shortly after the Sherpa samples. But first things first, I know I always try and have my listeners try and communicate with me, and I like to reach out to them. I always like to know what you guys are thinking of the show, if you have any sort of reaction. You know, if you could always put something on social media and say, hey, I enjoyed this, hey, I didn't like it. And if you didn't like it, you could always email me at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. It's that simple. And if you enjoy it, then, we have to make a big production out of it. Everything else will kind of stay a secret. I don't know. That's the way we're doing it. But back to my new way of communicating. I am trying out a newsletter, and you can sign up through my website. You'll notice when you go to sherpalution.com, the little banner pops up, and it asks you for your name and your email address. And I can tell you this, the newsletters will be short and brief, and you will not get overloaded with them. I'm probably going to do them every other month right now is the plan. And I don't give your email address out to mail, to people to put on their mailing lists. It just stays here. I'm not sending you any spam. You're just going to get the email, and you can read it and, do with it what you may. I'll try and get some feedback from you in a lot of different ways, not strictly about podcasts, but maybe about other things, Maybe we can open up a fun discussion about something else. I don't know. What do you like to do? What are you doing when you're not listening to podcasts? Are you listening to music? What's your favorite kind of music? Do you like sports? What's your favorite food? Stuff like that. Simple questions that, we can use to kind of get to know each other. So not just strictly about the show, but I'm sure there will be a little mention of the show here and there throughout the newsletter. And again, it won't come to you a lot. It'll probably be like every other month, which is how I'm going to start. I've only got a few people on there, and I want to let it grow a little bit, and I hope you would be interested in checking it out. Doesn't cost anything. I'll just need your email address, and I'll send it to you. And that's it. And if you want to respond to it, you can respond to it. If not, you have the option to unsubscribe as well. Okay, so that's number one important thing. Did I have a number two important thing? Oh, yeah, we have a contest, but we're going to have to wait on that because right now I would like to get into a little bit of Sherpa Samples.
And now it's time for Sherpa Samples. If you've got a podcast you'd like us to mention, just message us and you'll get your name mentioned on the show.
Okay, so I went with a little theme for this week's Sherpa Samples, and it's 10 podcasts under 10 minutes. It's interesting because I know some people that listen to podcasts say, well, I don't have enough time to listen to podcasts, or they maybe have a short attention span like me, or maybe they pick out podcasts that are just very long and, they get bored with it quite easily. These are 10 good ones. They're all very different from each other. And I can tell you that I listened to these 10 within the span of an afternoon. So maybe if you're going for a short walk with your dog and you've got your phone on and you want to check out a podcast, these have consistently short episodes. Two that I didn't include on the list that are actually on my playlist that you might want to check out are Morning Cup of Murder, if you're a fan of true crime. And we've had Corina and Dylan on the show a while back, if you listen to that episode, and they were a lot of fun. Super nice couple. And there's also a news podcast called The Newsworthy. A lot of news podcasts are pretty short, and it'll be the first one on my list, as a matter of fact. But this is hosted by Eric and Mandy. They're usually about 10 to 15 minutes. And they usually do one longer episode on a specific topic on the weekends. But definitely a good way to catch up on your news without getting wrapped up in opinions and over-analysis. It's just the facts, straight ahead. She's a very pleasant person. She has a very nice speaking voice, so you'll enjoy hearing her voice. And she makes it fast, fair, and fun, as she says in her tagline. So those are two right off the bat. You can check them out. And here are the 10 that I checked out. We have The 7, and that's a podcast by the Washington Post. And it's basically 7 news stories summed up in under 10 minutes. Sort of like Newsworthy, that same kind of vein, just straight out of the headlines with this one. If you wanted like a quick dose of your news, that's another option. Brain Stuff is one that was created by a guy named Marshall Brain, believe it or not. And it's from iHeartRadio. And if you listen to the Stuff podcasts, meaning stuff you should know like I do, it's not stuff you should know like I do. It's stuff you should know, but I listen to it. And stuff you missed in history class, stuff mom never told you, tech stuff. They're all kind of from one network. And this is one of the mini podcasts giving you information, probably in even a shorter vein than Stuff You Should Know. I know Stuff You Should Know does short stuff. It's actually even shorter than short stuff. That sounds very silly to say. The Big Mac Daddy, which is a radio program that's been around since the 1970s, is NPR's All Things Considered. And it's just a lot of different little stories for you to check out. The one that I listened to had to do with a cat lady who arranged that once she passed away, that the money in her estate would go to taking care of stray cats. And there was a little bit of a story behind that. So all little slices of life kind of things in All Things Considered. Science Quickly is a science podcast that is brought to you by Scientific American, which I believe is a science magazine and a very well-respected one, if I'm not mistaken. The episode that I listened to was How to Soothe a Crying Baby. Maybe you'll just have to check out the episode. I won't give you the answer on that one. But it's actually very basic, and it's tried and true science, and these things work. Hey, science! You got to love that. We talked about a podcast a while ago called Hidden Brain that deals with all things that have to do with mental functions. And they have a mini podcast called My Unsung Hero. And they are short episodes about people who want to pay tribute to other people for steering them in the direction of their lives. And there are a lot of different stories. We need a lot of positive things like that. That's really cool. The episode that I had listened to was about a gentleman who was a star baseball player, and I think he was hoping to go into the majors. And I think the scout that was scouting him for college actually convinced him to stay in school, and he ended up staying in school and became a very famous psychologist and author. So there you have it. Like little positive stories like that. We need positivity on a podcast. Before Breakfast is a podcast by Laura Vanderkam, and it's a little mini podcast. Go get it before breakfast. You can digest it really quickly about being organized with your life. And she has such a soothing voice, too. So it's nice to hear a soothing voice in a podcast that's going to be early before you eat your breakfast or even have your morning coffee. Little simple things, little life tips, very enjoyable. And the lady's obviously very knowledgeable as well. 50 Things That Made the Modern Economy. Here we are again, Tim Harford. This guy's name comes up in all sorts of these BBC podcasts. Pushkin Industries is the name of the brand, I guess, of BBC podcasts that he works under, and there's always interesting stuff. This episode that I listened to was about the slot machine, and there was a lot of interesting facts behind it. I really enjoyed it. A couple of funny ones. Netflix is a daily joke. Netflix is a joke. It's a podcast that features the comedians who've had Netflix specials. And Netflix is a daily joke, basically features on one comedian with one joke, and they're usually pretty quick. The one that I listened to was Chris Rock, and I always find Chris Rock very funny. I think he'd be great on the show. You know, I think he'd be a really big hit. Oh, wait a minute. No, maybe I should choose a better phrase than that. He told a joke that I don't want to repeat on the podcast. We'll just leave it at that. And also, another one that was a lot of fun to listen to was Best of the Worst. And the guys who do the podcast Myths and Legends, which I think we featured in a previous Sherpa Samples, they do this one. And it's the weirdest villains in comic strips. And the villain that they talked about in the episode that I listened to was Ding Dong Daddy, who was a rival of the Teen Titans. And not only did I enjoy the podcast, which was really funny, they also had their own little parody ads in there too. And that'll definitely make you laugh. So if you're in the mood for a chuckle, or even you're just a fan of animation and you go, oh yeah, I remember that, definitely one of the podcasts that you would like to check out. And finally, True Stories with Seth Andrews. And if you are an old-time radio listener, or, well, not too old-time, but if you remember a radio broadcaster by the name of Paul Harvey, this is the style of a Paul Harvey broadcast. Little bite-sized episodes, with little slices of life stories, and he has that same kind of Paul Harvey delivery. I enjoyed it. It was very different. And he was talking about unusual divorces. And who would think that you would enjoy an episode hearing about weird divorces on a podcast? I did. So there you have it. 10 podcasts, under 10 minutes. Pick and choose which one you'd like to listen to if you want to check them out. And if you've got a podcast that you'd like to recommend to me, you know what to do. Just reach out to me on social media at Sherpalution on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And if it's a podcast that I have not yet checked out and I do it on the show, I will gladly mention your name and give you a shout out, as they say. So now, let's move on to the exciting news and the outro.
Let's get back to the Sherpa. Sorry about that.
A very special thanks to all of you for spending a little time with little old me, Jim the Podcast Sherpa. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Too Many Podcasts. But before I let you go, we do have a contest. And this is where I'm going to need your help, but I'm sort of enticing you to help me out because there's a chance that you can win something. Here's what I want to do. My mission is to get 100 reviews on Apple Podcasts. And I know you as the listener can gladly do that by just heading over to Apple Podcasts or even Spotify too. But let's just focus on Apple Podcasts. If you can, go on there and say some nice words. If you can even mention maybe the episode that you listened to, that would be fantastic too. I would ask that we kind of use the honor system here, that, you know, you just enter once. If you want to share this very episode with other people, let people know about the podcast and get them in on the contest, and maybe you win the prize, you can do that. That's fair. But let's make it look like a real authentic bunch of reviews so we can encourage more people to hear about the Sherpalution, just like you are doing right about now. Now, what is the prize, you may ask? Here it goes. Drum roll, please. Wait a minute. I think I have a sound effect, don't I? I don't know. Let me dig into my vat of sound effects here. The prize is you get to pick something out from the Sherpa shop. And it's on me. Whatever you want. Just one item, whether it be a sweatshirt or a phone case cover or a coffee mug or a tapestry. They have all sorts of things with Too Many Podcast logos on it and a couple of little extra things that I've created. I'm actually going to be probably working on a few more designs in the meantime because we're not going to do the contest until we get 100 reviews. Okay? So this will hopefully encourage you and maybe you to encourage other people to listen to the podcast as well and also leave me a review. And once you do that, how do I know that you've listened? Message me on Sherpalution on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and I'll take your name down and I will do a random drawing, and then I will contact you, and then you'll get your prize. Very simple, right? So we've got to really work hard here, all of us. I'll encourage you. You'll hear a lot of reminders about this contest. If you're listening for the next couple of episodes, and you can fast forward for a minute or so through it, or just listen to my dulcet tones, and you'll know what to do anyway. It's just that simple. But maybe I need to tell you several times before you actually take that time and write that review. I would greatly appreciate it. And as I said earlier, if you want to also check out my new newsletter, it's called What's Shaking at the Sherpa Chalet. Please do that as well, and you can get that by visiting Sherpalution.com, and you'll see the little pop-up to sign up. And when the next edition comes out, you will see it. Voila! It's that simple. So you can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps, of course, or at Sherpalution.com. All the episodes are there, even my side projects as well. So that'll do it for me, and we do have some guests coming up. Don't worry. And some exciting podcasters, too. People I think that you're going to like. So be sure to listen, and you'll be hearing from me soon. And in the meantime, Mr. Bruce, let's head on out of here as we say, Viva la Sherpalution. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yo, come back now, you hear?